I explored a post-apocalyptic alien planet. All forms of organic life on Teshub ended in the span of a full rotation of the planet around its axis. My colleagues named the planet after the old Hittite word for storm god. It felt appropriate, given the context. The expedition I was sent on had me mainly search for anything we could learn about the civilization that lived here. I was also tasked with exploring the planet as much as I could and see how nature reclaimed this world. We already had a pretty good understanding of how the world ended, so I didn't need to do much more than collect some samples. The apocalypse on this world was as tragic as it was sudden. In the simplest of terms, here is the science behind it. One of the planet's two binary stars ejected a massive solar flare that had an extremely high level of ionizing radiation. This is a normal recurring phenomena that active stars go through. Solar activity releases massive amounts of energy and radiation constantly. We estimated this one to have happened 16,482 years ago. It was relatively easy to pinpoint the exact moment because it was simple figuring out when all of the technology stopped working. Not only did it fry most technological equipment, it tore apart the very fabric of molecules. Life on Teshub doesn't exactly have DNA like life back on Earth. However, its genetic code is still built on a structure that is similar in principle. DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is a complex molecule made up of 4 bases. You would know them as the A, T, C and G letters that always popped up in science class. GNA, or glycol nucleic acid, has only 2 bases, namely D and P, but it forms a similar double helix to DNA. All of this is to say that every single life form on Earth is built on the same basis. No matter how different an amoeba might be from a polar bear. The same principle applies on Teshub. Both DNA and GNA molecules are held together by atomic bonds. These play a stabilizing role. The solar flare radiation that hit this world was extremely highly ionized. So highly ionized in fact, that it broke up molecules at an atomic level. Everything that was basking under the sun's light dropped instantly. When the mass coronal ejection hit, the atmosphere was supposed to stop the vast majority of the radiation hitting the planet's surface. This happens all the time back on Earth as well. We even had quite a powerful coronal mass ejection produced by a solar flare in the 19th century. It is known as the Carrington event and it was essentially a powerful geomagnetic storm that occurred throughout September 1st to September 2nd, 1859. It is considered to be one of the most severe space weather events in recorded history. While it wasn't as powerful as the one on Teshub, it did cause a number of significant events on Earth. Telegraph systems around the world were disrupted, with some operators receiving electric shocks from their equipment. Wires also emitted sparks and caused fires in some cases. Northern lights were seen as far south as the Caribbean. Some reports suggest that the aurora borealis was bright enough to read a newspaper by in some areas. Luckily for us, we weren't that reliant on transistor and circuit-based technology as we are today. Here is what we know about the last day of the Venatari, the advanced civilization that lived here. A day on Teshub lasts for roughly 26 hours and 16 minutes. Most of those on the dark side of the planet were sleeping when it happened. We managed to recover some data that showed the confused and bewildered reaction in this civilization's last moments of history. Initial reports were talking about individuals falling to the ground en masse. This quickly escalated as it became clear that the event was not limited to a certain city, country, or even continent. When the flare hit, it blasted around 46% of the planet's surface. It covered the largest and most populous continent in an instant. As the day went on, many on the other side were waking up and trying to figure out what was happening. As much as authorities tried to maintain calm, mass panic quickly ensued. After a complete rotation, most life on Teshub was exposed to the coronal mass ejection. There was no grandiose Armageddon. No giant meteor. No advanced weapon of mass destruction. Life did not go out with a bang, but with a whimper history ended with a short-lived panic lasting for approximately 14 hours. The Venatari were a very interesting species. Technologically ahead of us by quite a generous leap. For reasons we are still studying, they did not explore their solar system too much. To be fair, there isn't that much to explore compared to ours. It's very interesting how little material there was in the formation of this system. Only 5 planets were formed and only one in the habitable zone of its 2 host stars. They have indeed started to colonize one of the other planets, but we only found a small abandoned research station. They most likely ran out of resources. Imagine the irony, becoming a multiplanetary species after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, only to be wiped out mere decades before having a sustainable off-world presence. As far as their technology is concerned, I took back several samples of their computers, pictures of their vehicles' engines, and did my best to document the interior and exterior of their industrial complexes. Although most digital information has already been subjected to data decay, there is still quite a lot that we can unpack. From what we can tell, a very small percentage of the Venatari actually survived the event by accessing the equivalent of their internet. We saw messages being transmitted back and forth. It was mostly between people that lived in very deep underground stations or in the massive subsurface ocean research station. They appeared to have survived for quite a number of years but didn't manage to get back up on the surface and restart civilization. This was also the case for quite a number of animals and bacteria. A good portion of microscopic organisms somehow managed to withstand the radiation. As for aquatic life, we estimate that the flare didn't have an effect for more than 164 meters under the ocean's surface. Everything below that level survived just fine without any idea of what was transpired above. I also managed to find a decent number of complex microscopic life at the North Pole. Due to the planet's inverse inclination on its axis and time of the year, this area was not exposed to the radiation burst. It's quite eye-opening to see how suddenly everything can change, or in this case end. There are events that you can prepare for. Massive phenomena that very advanced alien civilizations can survive through. But how do you prepare for this? A random event, from an uncaring universe, absolutely indifferent to the plight and struggle of life. Exploring the stars is, if anything, sobering. I have learnt most of what I could in my 3-week-long expedition. The most interesting thing about the Venatari's technology is a large scientific center. I didn't manage to go in on my own, but from what we managed to decrypt so far, it seemed to be focused on something related to its binary stars. For the Verne Observatory, this was researcher Emile Garnielli.